Hello, everybody. My name is Chloe Quiros, and I am the Assistant Chief Marketing Officer at Project Talent Launch. And today I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Anis Acharya, the Head of Commercial at Molecular Instruments Incorporated.
Cool. Thanks, Chloe. It's great to be here recording with all of you. I'll just share my screen. Probably should have done this before, but let's see if it works. Does that work, Chloe? Can you see that? Okay, cool. So yeah, as Chloe mentioned, my name is Anish. I lead the commercial team at a biotech startup called Molecular Instruments. A little bit about me. I was born in England and grew up in New Jersey, went to high school in New Jersey. Throughout high school, I had no real idea what I wanted to do, but just knew I enjoyed some of the courses I took. Like I enjoyed bio, I sort of enjoyed physics. Math was interesting, but I liked English. I kind of liked a bunch of my classes, but I also didn't like a bunch of them too. So I don't know, felt like a pretty normal high school student without really knowing what you want to do. When I went to college, I originally applied to be a pre-med major, and I was going to do something kind of random like political science or international relations, just so I could like do something outside of the sciences and learn something there. I ended up actually studying bioengineering at Boston University. I was there for 4 years, and every year I tried to do something with my summer, like do some lab work or shadow someone or just do something. And I tried to do something different every summer. So I worked in all kinds of different types of labs primarily. So through college, I kind of realized that I really enjoyed being an engineer and working on those kinds of problems. And so I actually dropped pre-med in my sophomore year, and kind of realized that for the kinds of jobs I wanted to go to grad school. Again, like didn't really know what I wanted to do or be when I grew up. So bioengineering is a pretty broad major where you can do a bunch of different things afterwards. So that's what I did. I applied to grad schools in my junior year, I think it was, or senior year, senior year. And then I ended up moving out to Pasadena, out to LA for my PhD. And I studied bioengineering here at Caltech. And again, like still didn't know what I wanted to do. Was just kind of trying to learn more. I worked in a lab here that was very focused on engineering new products, new tools using biology. It's kind of a strange thing to be doing, but there were a few labs in the country that did it, and I found one at Caltech. Typical PhD takes about 6 years. So I was there for 6 years. After I graduated, I knew I didn't want to work at the bench anymore. I didn't want to be a full-time scientist. And so I got a job in management consulting where, you work for like a chief executive officer or someone at sort of the chief executive level to help them solve tricky problems. It's a field that a lot of engineers go into after they go to school. And then you kind of learn a little bit about business, like the business side of things. And for me, that was really helpful after spending so many years on the science side. And so I did that for a while. I then worked at a tech startup in San Francisco, which was interesting. And if anyone's seen Silicon Valley, there are a lot of parallels between what it's like and what that show showed. And then about 2 and a bit years ago, I actually rejoined the team at Molecular Instruments. So MI is a startup that spun out of Caltech, actually from some of the work that I did during my PhD and our founder did during his PhD. And I've been part of the leadership team at the company, since about 2020. It was a week before I started the day of lockdown. So it's been an interesting 2 and a bit years. But it's just super cool for me because, when I graduated from my PhD and decided to leave science, I never thought I'd be able to come back and work on something that's so close to my heart. And to be honest, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, but this is kind of fun for now. So that's a little bit about me. I have a few slides just going into the company and what we do and why I think it's really cool. But Yeah, any questions, Chloe, or should I just go straight into it?
Well, you mentioned your high school experience
Yeah,
was a normal high school experience, and I
yeah,
just wanted to know, I mean, obviously, um, time moves by so fast. I think my high school, I'm only a sophomore, but even then it's been moving
yeah,
very quickly, especially like with the pandemic. And I just wanted to ask, like, how did you go through your high school experience trying to prepare yourself for college? Um, was it more of just like going through it? You know, did you carefully choose your classes? Did you make sure to get experience in high school? You know, like what were you stressing?
yeah,
I guess my big question was, were you stressing out about college at a young age?
yeah. It's a good question. I mean, like, I didn't go to college that long ago, but I do feel like it things have changed a little bit. Like everyone is so smart now and like does so much stuff that we talk often. It's like, would we go get into college anymore? But so to answer your question, I started doing like SAT prep maybe like around like probably earlier in my junior year, I think, but not really stressing about it. But for back then that was like the main thing you had to do. Like your GPA, all that stuff mattered, but like you were kind of doing that every day and working towards that. Um, I had a few extracurriculars. Like, back then I was thinking about going into medicine, so I worked at like the local like I volunteered at one of like our local hospitals, and I like shadowed some um, I guess like professors who had like clinical labs, but I don't think everything was planned out. And like, honestly, even if I had done everything perfect to go to med school, like I'm not that kind of doctor today.
Right.
So I don't think it needs to be. I think it's helpful to use a lot of that time just to figure out what are the things you
Mhm.
um, like what are the things you don't mind spending time on. And I don't know, it's tricky because uh, I can say this now, but like, you know, in my AP bio class, I got a C. Like that was my grade for the year. And like now I lead commercial at a biotech startup and I have a PhD from Caltech. But like, so it's not necessarily like an indicator of where you're going to end up. It's, high school's tough. And so
Mhm.
um, I think if you figure out what you like, it doesn't have to be things you have like great grades at because, that's not a perfect system either.
Right. Yeah, I think I agree with you. Like now, and not to diminish anything you've ever done or like in high school, but I
Yeah.
think
Yeah. Yeah.
students have definitely been stressing out a lot more about college, making sure that they have everything perfect to get into college, and just making sure that their future is perfect. But there's really no way to start that in high school or even like once you graduate from college. Like I feel like your journey is always ongoing. So I think definitely my generation is something that we get tunnel vision where it's like we forget that like there's always a second option. There's always something else you can do. You don't always have to stick with plan A.
Yeah, totally. And something I like something like I felt growing up is, my parents are immigrants to the country and like immigrant like Asian household is stereotypical, but it's true. Like there are a handful of really good schools, and if you don't get into one of those schools, then clearly something didn't go right, and it's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
Like yeah, success can't be measured that way. Happiness can't be measured that way. Like fulfillment in your own journey and career just can't be filled that way. And there are just so many amazing schools out there, and so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I wouldn't. It's easy for me to say now, and I'm sure it's like hard someone in your position to like feel it. But it's like try not to stress because everything works out, and you work hard and figure out what you like doing. You'll probably be good at
Thank you. That was beautifully said. So I will let you continue.
it. Okay, cool. I'll go through this. Oh, I have these confidential things here, but it's not confidential, so don't worry. So Molecular Instruments is a really interesting company, and we make products that most people never think about. So um, basically, one of the biggest industries today is drug development, pharmaceuticals, like how companies like Genentech or Pfizer or Novartis, and we all know like Pfizer and Moderna lately because of the COVID vaccine and all that stuff. But how do these companies actually develop drugs? How do they figure out what chemicals they can put into people and have them do something that like either cures disease or acts as a vaccine or does some kind of thing? Um, and the truth is, a lot of what they do depends on tools, like the tools they have available to them. So if you can imagine like an analogy where, you can't build a house without, is going to show you how little I know about building houses. Like you can't build a house without like a hammer and a screwdriver and like the basic tools for doing it. You can't develop drugs without the basic tools for understanding how biology works. So at Molecular Instruments, we make products that are those tools. So we build the tools that enable drug development. This picture right here is of a chicken embryo. So we're actually imaging it from the top. So you can imagine if the chicken embryo is like laying on its side, and we image from the top. These are different colors, which are different genes that are being expressed in that chicken embryo. And the cool thing with our technology for our products is that it's easy for new customers or new users to purchase a product from us and do this, and they can detect all kinds of targets or genes that they're interested in. So you can configure a product from our company that may be relevant to a certain type of cancer or to COVID or to whatever specific thing that you as a scientist or a drug developer are looking to do. So I wanted to talk a little bit, so just to give you guys give everyone some context for who we are. The lab that I did my PhD in, and a few of us at the company did our PhDs in, invented this new mechanism called HCR. We don't need to talk about it too much, although I think I have a slide on it on the next one. But we invented this mechanism, we meaning the lab, in 2004. And then in 2010, we sort of built the very first product for doing this kind of imaging. And since then, we've steadily improved it over time. And it's really cool, honestly, to, back when I was a grad student, we were working at benches with our test tubes, like doing experiments on a bench. And now, leading commercial, I get to talk to, very senior people developing drugs, and they're actually using our products. And that's the coolest thing ever, right? Like something we built, people we've never heard of suddenly depend on it to do their work. And that's a really humbling thing about what I get to do every day. Today we have about 22 people in our office. We're actually located in Eagle Rock. And we do all of our manufacturing there. We do all of our research there. We have a lot of people from Southern California, which is cool because, despite me like being from a few different places, like I think I've lived in Southern California more than anywhere else. And, we all love it here. So that's really cool. I think that's everything I wanted to show here, but we have lots of users around the world. They work with all kinds of different organisms, like whether it's like mouse or chicken or human, human tissue sections, those kinds of things, all the way to like, we hear people talk about using like daddy long legs and German cockroaches and all kinds of strange organisms that we never would have worked with. But it's a pretty cool thing to be able to be part of the team that kind of saw it at the very beginning when we had maybe like 3 users around the world and they were all us, and now thousands of users around the world and growing really quickly. HCR is an interesting thing. I'm not going to go into the details here, but HCR is cool. Like there's basically a new and growing field called synthetic biology, and Caltech is an interesting place because it's kind of the birthplace of this type of synthetic biology called molecular programming. And what molecular programmers want to do is use the principles of biology to program circuits or program things. So in the same way that, we buy an iPhone and it has integrated circuits of electricity that perform some logic and let us do all kinds of things, we're trying to build those kinds of tools using DNA and have them run apps or execute some programmable logic inside cells. So this is kind of a schematic overview of the products we sell today, but it's a very, very new field. Like most people I speak to who are our customers, they also will need a lot of explanation to really understand this. But it's a really cool thing, and I think we're getting a lot of traction. I mentioned we have thousands of users, but we also do serve like some of the most important and big institutions and companies around the world too. So In the top left, they're just like a handful of some of the drug development companies we work with, and you may have heard of some of these. In the top right, like the NIH and the Broad Institute are sort of educational or academic institutions who use our products. And then, of course, since we started, our main group of users have been at universities all around the world, and this is just a small section of them. Yeah, I'm gonna pause there because I have some details which I don't know, Chloe, might be helpful, but I think that this is like a good introduction to who we are. I'll just show you one image at the end. This is sort of like our, one of our favorite images to show. So this is actually like a section of an entire mouse brain. Wow. And what we've stained here are 4 different protein targets using our amplification. And the cool thing is, again, like this is really easy for someone to do. It works every time, which sounds crazy, but in the world of biology, things usually don't work. And it's accessible. Like, so we made these really cool images that are really hard to get, but we don't charge, like $10 million to be able to do this. So, we have built some cool products that are easy for people to start working with.
Wow.
So yeah, I'll pause there. I don't want to get too much in the weeds because then, it'll be, might not be helpful. But that's a little bit about who we are. I can talk a little bit about my role, actually. That might be helpful. I forgot to do that at the beginning. I'm just going to wait on this slide. But so my role, head of commercial is a vague title. We're like I mentioned, we're a small company. We're at about 22 people. I would divide our company up into 3 major teams. One is the research team, and so research kind of does what you might expect. Like they do all the experiments to figure out how to build these products, and they will do, looking at this slide, they will do all the work on these kinds of molecules to figure out like how do we make better products. The second team is operations. Operations is responsible for the day-to-day running of the company. So many startups don't sell products. Many startups are promising a future where they will sell products, and we're not that kind of startup. Like, we sell products every day, we ship them around the world, and so we need to have a team that makes these products to a very high quality standard and then ships them out all over the world and supports them. So if someone purchases a product and has a question, we have to be able to answer those questions quickly. So that's the operations team. And then the third team is my team. That's the commercial team. I think when most people think about commercial, I think they think about like sales and marketing and pretty much those two. And that is a part of my team. I will say that that's not the main focus of my team. The main focus of my team is, what is the point of our company? Like, why are we here? Like, yeah, we can sell these products, we can make them, we can help people do these kinds of imaging, but like, what makes us different? Like, what is our overall strategy as a company? And how do we figure out what are the things we should do as a company that will help us realize that strategy? So a lot of it is spent on, these are words like corporate product strategy, product development. We do a lot of outreach. So one thing that we are doing more and more of is working with universities to sponsor part of people's biology courses and let them work with these cool tools at a really early stage in many scientists' careers. The truth is, when I took biology, which again wasn't that long ago, when we tried to do these kinds of experiments, we were using tools that were developed in like the 60s. And that's kind of what people have been using even today. So there are universities we work with where we can give them the products for free and then let students get some hands-on experience younger and see what can be done. So as head of commercial, we kind of lead that whole side of the company. But yeah, so my day ends up being about a lot of different things, and even doing things like what we're doing right now is a really fun part of my role too, where get to talk about how cool we are to so the next generation of scientists as well. because it wasn't that long ago that like all of us at the company were in your shoes as well. And I depended on a lot of good like mentors and help, and so we try to do that for people whenever we can.
Wow. And I wanted to ask, just maybe if you could go a little more in depth of what your day-to-day maybe work schedule looks like how many days a week do you work?
Yeah.
How long,
Yeah. So startup life is a little weird. So my philosophy for a long time has always been, my team, I will not ask them to work weekends. So like Monday to Friday is typical. Sometimes, I think most people will work like normal hours, like, 8 or 9 until 5 or 6 is typical. But there are times when, maybe more work comes in. Like I certainly have had times where you work at like a couple hours on Saturday or Sunday, or like a little late during the week. But we try to maintain pretty healthy work-life balances whenever possible, because I was a consultant for several years, and that lifestyle is not sustainable, where you're working like 80 to 100 hours a week, and people burn out, and you get a couple good years out of someone, and then they're just done with the job. But we, especially for us, like we have to hire good people, but like we want to keep them for a really long time. So we do try to make it more normal.
Yeah, and so then maybe just to bridge a little bit into the like recruiting side of it, when you do hire people for your company, what do you look for in a candidate?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sorry, I'm just gonna stop that. Yeah, it's a good question. I think it depends on what team. I think like different teams have different roles that are better fits for different kinds of people. Thinking about who we are, like I think we try to hire people who are excited about either what we do, or excited to work at a small company where the goal is we will have a very big impact. One of the things a startup can offer that a lot of big companies can't is, when I hired a few people on my team, like they may have come straight out of college, but they all lead their own projects completely now. And so you get a lot of independence at a small company and a lot of responsibility. And, we'd like to hire people who are excited about that. And the only other thing I'll add is, like, I think one of the best traits that I was told to prioritize, like one of the best traits you can have as a person is being coachable. And so like that means like not assuming you know everything. And that includes me. Like if I talk to my team, like I don't assume I know everything, because everyone has their own like unique path that they've been on, where they've seen different things and have different opinions. And being coachable, I think, is just super important. Nobody knows, nobody comes into any job knowing how to do everything. And so being okay with being wrong and learning are all really important things.
Right. Yeah. And this is a bit of a tough question to answer, but is there anything that you believe in, whether it be your childhood, teenage years, adulthood, that prepared you the most to work with, like in a small startup with a small group of people? Like, is there maybe like one experience that has stood out to you that has helped you the most?
Yeah, that is a difficult question, but it's a good one. I don't want my answer to sound too pessimistic, but I think it's important, or I think it's, if you ever have the experience of working with like a bad group or a bad team member or a bad manager, like a bad boss, those are all like so important to have. Like everyone's going to have at least one. So like you can't feel bad if you're in that spot, but you end up learning so much from being treated poorly, like in a job or on a project or something, because like for me, like it always internalized, like I am never going to do that to somebody else, So I don't have like one particular one that I can point to, and it's not as if I've only ever worked in bad teams, but like I think there are a few times, like even as recent as like several years ago, like where you have bad experiences, but you learn from it, and then you become a better teammate or partner or manager or someone who is being managed, like to your boss, and you become a better employee for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I myself, obviously, I'm still in my high school years, but
yeah.
I've been juggling with is definitely learning from my own mistakes. Because I think I definitely have sometimes like that mindset where it's like I'm the only person who's right, and so I should only listen to myself. But I think when learning from my own mistakes and then also learning from the mistakes of others, is
Yeah.
so valuable. And I don't mean that in a way as to like put other people down, but even if it isn't like a
Yeah.
major mistake, like take learn something from somebody else, whether it be good or bad, I think is really like a different way I've been looking at life. It sounds very existential, but I.
No. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, it's such a good point. And like, I think a lot about like, well, obviously I think a lot about my team, but I want my team to feel comfortable being wrong. And so, you
Mhm.
know, you can't learn from someone's mistakes unless like you're in a safe environment to be wrong.
Right.
Um, but I worked in places where it's not safe, right? Like you don't want to be wrong because you're punished if you're wrong. And I think that's counterproductive. Like obviously nobody wants to be wrong and everyone tries to do their best, but yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important. There are some things we do as a company, like we call them retros, where we'll work on a project, and then at the end of a project, we will have a meeting where we'll take a retrospective look at like what went wrong with the project, what went well, like what are the things we should do more of, like what are the things where we could do better next time. And it's not meant to be like like, oh, you did a bad job on this, therefore next time we won't include you. It's meant to be like, what are the things we can improve on? And you shouldn't just ignore them or like sweep them under the rug. Um, yeah, because at the end of the day, like we're all growing every day, right? Like no one's a finished article, including myself, including our CEO. Like we're all people who are growing and learning as well. Yeah, having a company culture of that, I think, is really important.
Mhm. Yeah. Wow. I think
Yeah.
that's really interesting. At Project Talent Launch, we've hosted a few events similar
Mhm.
to this one, as well as events with our interns. We've done something similar where we kind of debrief after each event, but I think it's really interesting that you
Okay.
back, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. It can be hard, especially it can be hard, like especially if you are a younger person and your boss is asking you to like critique like something. It can be hard to actually feel comfortable to speak up. And
Right.
there are places where people say that, but they really just want to be like congratulated or patted on the back.
Hmm.
It's like not really like a genuine question. So
Right.
yeah, it's something I think about a lot too.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think one thing I also wanted to ask you is it's a bit on our agenda as well, job etiquette. I
Yeah.
think that often gets overlooked. I mean, I'm a dancer, so like I do ballet, so it's very strict, have the correct etiquette, stand in a certain place in the room. So, um,
Yeah.
me, I think also as well as many of my peers, I think we're afraid to go into new things because we don't really know what we're doing. So I don't know, maybe if there's like standards in the workplace or maybe in a startup that are good to know beforehand before you go in. Is there anything like important to know before the next generation
Yeah.
begins working?
Are you asking like if you're starting a job somewhere, like how to act, like that kind of thing?
Yes, so I think specifically maybe job recruiting, like the way you
Oh,
present
okay.
yourself to somebody, the like, how do you address somebody? I mean, it may sound like basics
Yeah.
to you, but it could be foreign to us.
No. I just wanted to make sure I understand the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Um, so it's super subjective. So I'll give you my opinion. Um, I think it's really important to like anytime you have like written communication to be professional, like not necessarily overly formal, like dear sir or madam, like you could say like, hey, Anish or like whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but it is important to be professional. So like spelling, grammar, all that stuff got to be on point. Um, Capitalization, all that stuff. You got to do it right. Um, but I also do think, when you are talking to someone, it's good to show off your personality because at the end of the day, like probably no company you want to work for will want to hire a robot. Like they want to hire you for what you bring to the team as well, like in terms of the culture.
Mhm.
So the advice I'd give is like show off your personality, like be yourself. And that's a lot easier to do like over Zoom or if you're meeting someone in person. Over email is a little tricky because sometimes like yeah, it's a trickier balance to like know like when do you use like emojis and exclamations and that kind of stuff over email. But yeah, I don't think, I'm not a fan of like overly formal etiquette, but again, like I'm at a startup where I think, we prefer like a flatter structure where like, it's okay to tell people, like not to tell people they're wrong, but it's okay to like disagree, but not be a jerk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I would focus on like letting your personality shine through. I feel like people can sometimes get nervous and then become very just, like weird or like robotic, and yeah, it's you don't really get to learn who they are when they do that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I just wanted to ask, are you at Molecular maybe somebody who, I don't know, oversees or is involved with the recruiting process? Okay. Yes.
Yeah, so we're still a small company, so we don't have like an HR department. So I think, well, let's say probably like a year ago, I was doing a lot of the recruitment for the whole company. Since then, we've grown, and so now I kind of just recruit for commercial and some product roles. But yeah, we'll have the team leads kind of do the recruiting for their own team. So we'll have our head of operations recruiting for operations, and our head of research recruiting for research. But yeah, we kind of do it ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Next, I wanted to talk about is maybe like extracurricular experiences, like such
Yeah.
as internships, which is what we do at Project Talent Launch.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm sure it is beneficial, but is it really a necessity when going into biotech, like to have that
I
prior
see.
experience?
I see. You know, Probably not a necessity. It probably is for like, I don't mean you, but like whoever, like the student. It's probably nice to get it as a person, because then if you'll like it or not. Um, Probably in college and probably high school too, you get some lab courses, right? Like you probably have like a lab with chemistry and biology, right?
Yeah, I'm in one right now.
Okay, okay, cool. So yes, you'll get some like bench experience. You'll learn, like, do you like doing this kind of thing? You'll probably do more of it in college. I don't think it's a necessity, and maybe a couple of years ago I wouldn't have said that. Like, we've now, like, it's crazy, like especially the people like for your class as well, but like especially like the students who were like in their sophomore year in 2020 and then spent 2 years of college remote because of the pandemic. We've hired people onto our research team who didn't have any extracurricular lab experience, and I think one of them went to UCLA, and at UCLA I think they didn't even have labs. I think they just did like remote labs. So like you just saw a grad student do the lab, and they're great. Like they're doing great now. We can train them and we can teach them all those skills, but I think they knew enough to know whether they would like it or not. So I think that's the main reason why it's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, probably not like a hard requirement.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so then, I guess in terms of extracurriculars, I know there's definitely internships, volunteer opportunities, whether you shadow somebody or mentored by anybody. Um,
Yeah.
is that you mentioned that Molecular does work with colleges to provide the instruments that you create for those colleges. And do you do a bit of mentoring at Molecular with the schools, like to explain what you're doing? Is that a part of it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Sometimes when we're asked to, but we're not asked to
Mhm.
all that often because it'll be part of a course.
Right.
But we would. Like, I mean, obviously I know the people at MI, and I know everyone would love to do that kind of thing, but we probably don't do enough of it because it's like nobody's job at the end of the day,
Right.
right? Like no one's role is to do that. So, one other thing I would just say for like for for you and for any student who's like looking into doing these things is like a lot of a lot of how you get forward in life, I have learned, is just like hustle, like
Mm-hmm.
what you're willing to do. And like maybe there's no program for you to get something. I keep saying you, I don't mean you, Chloe, I just mean like in general. But like it's how much you like just ask. Like one of the not to go back too much, like one of the summer programs, one of the summer research experiences that I had in college was just because I like started emailing like a bunch of people who were working at the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, and they were doing something I was really passionate about, and someone responded and paid for my summer. And so there was no program. It was just, you just email, like just keep bugging people till they tell you to go away or give you a job. And, that's partially true. And so if someone is looking for like a mentor or like a career guide, like if there are people in your life who you can just like ask, I would just say do it, because worst case, they say no. I feel like that applies to so many different types of things, including me when I think about asking people for things. Like, well, worst case, they say no.
Yeah.
And best case, you get what you need. So so I'll say, we don't formally do it, but when things come up, we will happily help out.
Right. Okay. Next, I think we should talk about maybe like high school tips.
Okay.
Yeah. How to, anything maybe you wish you had done in high school or something that worked well for you in high school?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like you should give me tips. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, it's a lot. High school is such a weird time. I mean, I tried to take as many like electives as I could, like different courses. I took German throughout high school. I don't know how useful that was, but yeah, I don't know. I think I just used, like, the tip would be like use that time to like think about the things you like. And I know a lot of my friends, I feel like a lot of people go to college and they're undecided on a major, and that can be fine. But there are majors out there where there are majors that still give you a lot of flexibility after on what you want to do. So one of the reasons I picked bioengineering was because, like, from high school, I learned I liked those courses, and I knew, like, after I graduated, I could do a bunch of different things, like not necessarily only like one type of job. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have any like tips. I feel like I wouldn't have any relevant tips anyway.
Yeah. No worries. I think I agree with everything you've said as far as, explore the things that you're interested in. I think now, and I don't know if you can attest to this, but there's definitely a lot of pressure to be the best that you can be. Very competitive. I think academics now are very competitive environment. So I don't know if, I mean, I myself don't even know if there's anything I can think of to do now. I think mainly one thing I've been struggling with is how do I cater to colleges so that they look at my application and think like this is somebody who I want to accept. And then thinking like, is that really my main priority? Like, I will land somewhere that is right for me. So should I spend my time making sure that they like me, or is it,
it's a good question. And, like, every high school student goes to class. Every high school student, has like a bunch of things that are fixed the same, right? And like grades matter for sure, but like, I don't know, I would double down on the things that are unique about you. And like for you, if you're a ballet dancer, like maybe that's the unique thing, right? Because not every high school student does that. Like probably just a tiny percentage, and that's an important part of who you are, maybe. So yeah, like, I mean, for me, when I was in high school, like I loved playing tennis, and I made that a big part of what I did. And who knows if it helped me or not? I have no clue. But it still like gives you something beyond just being a student, because everyone is a student by default, right?
I think a piece of advice I got in middle school, it was my 8th grade year, is the first time I came to the school I'm at now. And it is a college preparatory school, so it's pretty competitive, but it's enjoyable. One thing that stuck with me is high school and middle school are the time to create the good habits that you need. So whether it be time management or like the ability to work with people, whether it be a group project, all these skills that you acquire in high school will translate to your adulthood, so college, and like once you are finally being employed. I think that's something I've been trying to focus on as well. So it's like creating those small little habits that will, make worlds of a difference later.
Yeah, well, that's really impressive. I feel like I think a lot of people don't learn good habits till you're in college. So yeah, if you can get a head start now, that's amazing.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. And so next, I wanted to talk about resumes. For
Okay.
me, I am very, very intimidated by resumes. I've
Yeah.
started trying to make my own. I
Yeah.
was working with my mom, and I was like, I don't know what to put on there. I
Yeah.
also maybe part of it was like self-doubt. It was like, well, maybe I should have more experiences here. Maybe I should be more impressive. So maybe when you look at somebody's resume, like what sticks out to you?
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, it's a good point, because like one thing is, how do you write the things you should put on? Like everyone will know, like put on like your education, your extracurriculars, um, maybe like honors and activities, like things like that. Um, so, like the basics are all there. Like make sure like looks good and is not like 10 pages long. Like probably one page is good.
Okay.
Not tiny fonts. Um, I think it's good. I have no data for this, but I think it's good to fill out a page versus like, so like you could even do like creative spacing and stuff to make, like if you feel like you don't have enough for the page, like just make it take up a page. I'm not, but that's better than like writing in stuff that doesn't
Right.
matter. So, I think there are like I don't think I've ever read a resume and thought there's not enough on this page. Um, because I think it's pretty well understood that a resume is like a curated selection of what you think is important to highlight about you. It doesn't have to be like 100%. These are all my facts and nothing else. So if there are things that you think don't need to be said about you as far as the highlights go, like leave them off. That's okay.
Mhm.
Um, but so having all the right sections, having it look like a professional document is good. I also like it when people put like something more personal on it. So like on my resume, I always put like my hobbies, like things I like to do. And, um, you know, it's nice to signal to someone that you are more than just like where you went to school and what awards you won, but you're a person and you're well-rounded and you do stuff outside of school. And there are times where I've had that resume where you strike up a conversation based on one of the things you've written there. So I think that's a good thing to put. And yeah, just like you really put some thought into like, what are you trying to convey about yourself with the resume? And like, if there's something on your resume that doesn't really fit in,
Right.
just take it off. Like you don't have to put it on there just to fill up space.
Hmm. And so then in a resume, do you believe that you should appeal to maybe like a certain audience, which would be the employer? Do you think you should change your resume, whether it be like different jobs that you apply for, like, or should it remain constant?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't think, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I guess it depends. If you're applying to like really different types of jobs where like you wouldn't even talk about some stuff at one of the jobs, and yeah, it makes sense to change it up. Um, I think for most cases, you're probably applying to like similar types of jobs at maybe different companies. I think you can probably keep the same one. I have seen people write like an objective statement at the top of their resume.
Mhm.
I I don't really know what purpose that is for, because usually we have something, my objective is to get a job at a biotech startup, let's say. But
Mhm.
if you're applying for a job, like the reader already knows that.
Yeah.
So I would leave those kinds of things off. And I think you can have one resume that you can use generally.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah. I will say like, don't go over one page. Like we get applications, and usually it comes from like um, people who are graduating from college or grad school where they'll have like multiple pages, and it's too much. Like if you can't pick the subset of things to highlight on one page, like most reviewers aren't going to read multiple pages unless it's a very specific kind of job.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. And is it that college, I don't know if you would have the answer to this, but is it that maybe
Yeah.
students are trying to overcompensate as they're just coming out of college, trying to
Yeah.
make up for their lack of experience? Is that?
Yeah, almost certainly. And like I think it's exactly what you mentioned, which is like if you feel like you don't have enough for a page, or if you feel like you like quantity is not quality, right? Like
Yeah.
nothing works that way. Like
Hmm.
I don't know. I'm even just thinking like if you watch like a movie, they don't just like make it 4 hours long and you hope it's better, right? Like you cut it and you edit it and you make it cohesive and tell a story and support something. And
Right.
yeah, I think there's not like a minimum number of facts you have to include in a resume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. I did ask this a little bit before, but
Mm-hmm.
is there like maybe something you wish you had known high school, college about working, just in general? Maybe with the different experiences that you've had, like, is there something that you really wish you had known sooner?
Yeah. I think the one that's come, there's probably a lot of things, but one that's coming to me is like nobody has, nobody, like there's no right answer. Like all the questions you've asked, like there's no right answer. And um, that'll be true for a lot of people that you get advice from too. You in general, like me too. Like nobody really knows the right answer. Everyone is biased. Everyone like has their own experience they've gone through. And so it's good to ask people these kinds of questions. I'm sure you have like a lot of these types of seminars lined up, and it's good to hear what different people have to say, and you figure out what resonates with you
Mm-hmm.
and how you want to do it. And maybe nothing resonates with you. You're like, I'm going to take a bit of this and a bit of that. I'm going to do things my own way. Yeah, I wish someone had told me that, because a lot of times when, when I was younger, you ask someone who's older some question, or someone who has got something you want, and you assume everything they did was right and every decision they would make is right. And it's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that's the thing I would say.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Um, so you mentioned as well as like healthy work-life balance. Is there
Mm-hmm.
something that you do to help you manage that? Like you mentioned, sometimes there's more work that you have to put in just depending on what's happening with molecular
Yeah.
instruments. Yeah, like how do you handle it?
Yeah, I'm pretty clear with people that like at a certain time, I won't check email unless it's an emergency.
Right.
And that includes like if I have something I think is really important on a Saturday, I will wait to like ask the person until Monday. I also like, I don't do this. I'm not a good example for it, but like I tell my team, like you can turn off notifications from Slack and from your work email for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or, one thing I was always taught and I really care about is like, if you take vacation, like take vacation, like turn off your phone, don't turn off your phone, like, turn off Slack, like don't get notifications and just unplug completely. So for me, it's all about having like very clear boundaries, because if I don't take a break from work, then I don't really, like, I don't feel better after it. Like you feel like you just worked, even if you were on your phone all day on work. So for me, it's about clear boundaries and just like being really clear with people, like, hey, I'm not going to be available during these times. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I like to do.
Mm-hmm. And say you do end up in a workplace that isn't necessarily respecting your boundaries, how do you deal with that? Like, how do you deal with a manager who isn't exactly respectful or receptive to what you have to say?
Yeah, it's tricky. My first thing was going to be like have a discussion with them, but if they're not receptive, it's tricky. Like there's not much you can do. You can set hard boundaries yourself. So like just tell people again, like, hey, I'm going to turn off notifications after hours. I'm just going to do it. And it's sad, but maybe you'd be punished for that. But that's like an important signal to take on board that you might be at a toxic workplace.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think most, yeah, it's tricky because there are also environments where it's not possible to do that kind of thing. So there is some level of compromise you have to do. So like in consulting, for example, and for banking as well, like you can't tell someone, hey, I'm gonna stop working at 6 o'clock. It's just not a thing you do, because if you do that, then your team has to make up for it. So there are different ways different companies do it. Like when I was in consulting, we would respect weekends. So Monday to Friday, you could work like 14, 16, 18 hours, but Saturday, Sunday was your own time. Like we wouldn't bother you on the weekends. I've heard there are consulting companies where they, like one day a week, they'll guarantee you will end work at 6 o'clock. And like, there are just things you can do if you do talk about it openly with your team. Like, how do we maintain some work-life balance? But yeah, if if no one's receptive, then it's really tough. You might just be, not you, but like in general, you might be in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, those are all the questions I had for you. This has been incredible. I mean, I don't want to be cliche and say I've learned so much, but I really have.
Oh, thank you, Chloe.
Yeah.
This is a lot of fun.
Thank you. Yes, I enjoyed it. I myself am interested in biology. And
Cool.
I was actually interested in pre-med, but I don't know.
Okay.
Always room for changes. But thank you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your patience with everything. And if there's anything else you'd like to mention.
No, I think you covered everything. Thank you. Thanks a lot for being patient with me too with my timing, and thanks for recording and having these great questions. And yeah, let me know if there's anything else we can ever help with.
All right. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks, Chloe. Good luck.